Good morning, Sher.
Hey, Candace.
Did you notice I didn't say hi, Sher?
I did. Yeah.
I, I thought I'd shake it up a little bit.
Hey. Oh, live on the edge, girl.
Yeah, it's good to be with you again today.
Yeah, you too. Always.
We recently recorded last week and the week before some episodes entitled Our Epic Story of Glory.
Yeah.
We wanted to process with one another and bring to our listeners this idea that we have worth and value and were created in the image of God. And that part of us does not get touched by the trauma that we've experienced. We also named that evil, trauma, harm does seek to mar that glory, which is our identity.
Yeah.
And so today we're going to further the conversation because last week you asked me a question. And if you haven't listened, go back and get exactly how you asked me the question. But when you asked me about the ways that I have perceived what my gifts and what my glory has developed or been revealed to me through the trauma that I experienced. And I got so excited to answer that because in this space, we do tend to turn against ourselves.
Yeah.
In this space, we have a very hard time seeing our glory, seeing our goodness, seeing our lovability.
Yeah.
And yet we want to see it. We actually do want to believe it. And so it was nice for me to be able to actually go back and hear myself saying what I believe that was.
Yeah.
But I realized I really wanted to ask that question to you.
Yeah.
And for our listeners to also understand that this is not just true for me and you. It is true for every single person listening to this episode.
Right.
And so we're going to start off with me doing, I don't want to say story work, but just asking you some questions. And we also want to wrap this in the context of how kind this is for me, for you, and how kind it would be for our listeners if they had someone moving in close to them to ask these types of questions.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that today?
Yeah. And I'll just say, as we started, it also feels a little vulnerable because we haven't worked this through carefully. I'm not sure exactly where we're going. And I think also that when we are talking about our glory, there's always this little bit of a hard place of being able to say, here are some things about myself that I believe are glorious. Like, that feels really hard. As a matter of fact, I feel a little teary almost even saying that we are very accustomed to the places where we have fallen short or where we fail. And it's much harder to name. Here is how I feel my life has been made glorious and revealed as glorious, even through the difficulties that I've endured. So, yeah, I just want to name that it feels vulnerable, and I'm willing to go here because of the reasons that you stated. So,
yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I see the vulnerability in this. I didn't feel so much that way because I didn't know we were going there.
yeah.
Yeah. And so I just want to say that, as you know, we have always given one another permission to edit, to cut, and to throw out anything that feels too vulnerable.
Yep.
So I want to start with, not every listener knows your stories like I do.
Mhm.
But when it comes to looking at our stories, we often say it is in the particularities of our stories, of the harm, of the trauma, of the messages that they sent to us
Mm.
that developed our belief systems. Those are the places that we need someone else to help us see.
Yeah.
We need a witness that can help us make sense, because in those stories we are showing up as littles.
Yeah.
6-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 16-year-olds that need wise guides, wise guidance, deep, deep loving kindness and tender care, what
Yeah.
they needed then. So we still get to do that today. And I want to preface that because I know the particularities of your stories, that even as a little child, you held this desire to be deeply kind.
Mm.
You were sensitive. You scanned the room and tried to get a sense of what people needed.
Mm.
And that gift in you, that glory in you was, I'm going to use the word consumed.
Mm.
But I wonder if you can share a little bit more of what that meant
Mm.
and what that has meant as you have tried not to reject that part of you
Mm.
because of the shame and the pain that it brought you later on. But now you're able to welcome her home.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, and I think even as you named that, there's a part of me that wants to rise up and say, well, I wasn't kind to everyone,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think I will say I think I particularly scanned the room to make sure my parents, both of them, were okay.
Mm-hmm.
And in different ways, I feel like I moved into the scenarios of conflict, which were many,
Mm-hmm.
with a desire to diffuse the tension
Mm-hmm.
and help them, particularly, be okay. And I think that was, in some regard, it was my way of protecting the whole family,
Mm-hmm.
but it may not have always looked that way to my siblings.
Right.
So I think it's, but yeah, that having the ability to kind of read the room and sense the tension building and kind of this courage to move toward it, with some level of belief that if I could handle everything just right, um, we would all come out alive.
Mm-hmm. Which, because I've gotten to see that gift in you now,
Mhm.
um, unless you know the particularities of the story, I want to go back to the word consumption. That because Cher is sensitive and deeply kind and has a desire to help everyone feel okay.
Mm.
Um, what has that been like for you when you have bumped up against people that, and when I say consume it, really what we're talking about is they see your gift and they see your glory, and they actually want to use it to
Mm.
make themselves feel better.
Mhm.
but at the sacrifice of doing their own work.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think, so I think because of the home that I grew up in and the dynamics, I learned at a pretty young age how to offer myself for consumption.
Mm.
I didn't know how to bring healing to the problems or how to help anybody really get free. Or I just knew that if I came into the scenario in a certain way, it could reduce the tension, and everybody would be okay. And I think that is what I moved forward in life. In that kind of became a way that I related a lot. Was being able to move toward situations of tension or difficulty and help the people who were involved get through it in ways that helped everybody and yet healed nobody or nothing, because I did not know how to actually do that. And I did this for many, many years of my life. I think back to when I was a very young teacher. And there are those students that are where their needs are just on the front burner, and I could see the neediness, and I would move toward that. And I even remember being cautioned by another teacher a few times about, just be careful because that particular student can demand a lot. And I remember just thinking, and this is when I'm like in my early 20s, thinking, well, if their needs are that apparent, surely we should be moving toward them. And so I would repeatedly offer myself for whatever resources I had, whatever energy, time, whatever. I would move toward because I knew that I could help the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Only I know now I was not bringing really the what was needed to really bring healing, rather just kind of that lessening the tension in the moment.
I'm going to give you a teeny bit of pushback on something.
Okay.
You were bringing what was needed. They needed comforted.
Yeah.
But even our comfort for others has boundaries.
Yeah.
We are called to bring comfort, but we can't be their only source of comfort.
Right.
So it's about giving something so good, but that person becomes dependent on that one thing.
Yeah.
For how they think that it's the only way they can be comforted.
Right.
And I want to say, when you do that today, you offer comfort today. You haven't stopped helping people with what they need, but you've moved into empowering them outside of yourself.
Yeah.
Does that feel true?
Yeah, very much so. And I think partly it's true because I have been comforted.
Mm-hmm.
My wounds have received care. And so out of me knowing and experiencing that kind of comfort and care that was and is, strongly boundaried with healthy boundaries, right? Like, where lavish, tender love, like the best tender goodness and love I have experienced in my life, is offered, and in a way that is powerful and empowering, but not free for consumption.
Yeah.
And I also am encouraged not to offer my goodness free for consumption.
Mhm.
because I knew how to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I forgot what your specific question was. How am I doing that now? I think I do move toward, and I love to move toward people who are struggling, but it's with a different means of coming alongside
Mhm.
and offering compassion and kindness and goodness, and being willing to let them struggle through what that, um, how they will choose or not choose to really work toward um, the healing that is waiting for them.
Mhm. Yeah, and so helping a person, like what I'm seeing here, is that comfort that they experience in your presence, and we'll add deep kindness to that, and actually radical acceptance. It's a profound gift you have,
Mm,
and helping them access that. It's like them coming alive, that they are worthy of that,
yeah,
that there's nothing shameful about wanting to experience that in our bodies,
yeah,
and then helping them turn towards themselves, that they can also bring that to themselves.
yeah, yeah. I think the whole IFS framework, internal family systems, and getting to know my parts. I think we talked about this. I'm not sure which episode, but um, getting to know my younger parts. So you know, my 8-year-old girl who is playful and fun and will go the extra mile for anyone.
Mhm.
Getting to know my 6-year-old little girl who longs for the tenderness of a mother's love and knew that it wouldn't come from my mother and began hunting
Mhm.
for that. Like, I have these different parts and they have their own particular struggles. And as I have come to understand these dynamics going on in me and come to accept them and love them and help them find healing, I love coming alongside of others and helping them also begin to get to know um, their younger parts
Mhm.
so that they can move toward them with gentleness and kindness and see them as the delightful, beautiful, innocent child that they were, and begin to help them relate with those aspects of their own heart and soul in ways so different than they have been accustomed to, out of the need for protecting and
Mhm.
hiding shame and, yeah, all of that.
I'm smiling so big right now because we just heard your glory.
Mm,
Oh, wow. Now
yeah,
I'm getting teary.
yeah.
And we are in the same story group, have been for, are we going on 3 years?
I think we're finishing 3 years, Candace.
Okay. So we finished 3 years.
Yeah.
And we all know each other so well, and the particularities of our stories and how we show up.
Mm,
We also, I've noticed, we just did a group that we spoke blessings over one another. So we all kind of hold these gifts that we all can honor and recognize and call out in one another.
yeah.
And I want to say that I was smiling so big, not only because I was hearing your glory, but in my body, I felt what I feel like when there's 5 of us on the screen and you pop in and you bring us back to the child who
Mhm.
needs to know that it wasn't her fault,
Yeah.
that she's not bad,
Yeah.
that she's not too much.
Yeah.
I'm getting personal here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just want to say that that glory in you, that gift,
Mm,
we all look to now
yeah.
and we need and
Mm,
we want
yeah.
and we delight in you. I delight in you.
Mm.
What does it feel like to be delighted in?
Yeah, it feels so good. And thank you for those kind words. And I'm just thinking about, well, I want to come back to delight, but I want to just say that I have been lingering this week over um, my dad's death 2 years ago. My dad died 2 years ago, and we had been estranged for many years. And as I was, and I will get very emotional here, and I'm okay with that. I'm really comfortable with that. But as I lingered this week over the deep harm that he brought to my life in so many ways, I think for the first time, I also was just so attuned to the fact that in him was this little boy who was so hurt and so
Mm,
injured. And I don't know his stories. He did not share his childhood, he didn't talk about his childhood at all. But I think one of my little girls saw his little boy.
mm,
And just for me this week to really be able to see that part of him with kindness,
mm,
it really helped me enter sorrow in a very different way that I haven't really gone deep into sorrow over his passing 2 years ago as much as I have this week, that I have felt deep, deep sorrow and sadness that
mm, mm,
um, that part of him, as far as I know, did not receive the kind of care that was needed for him to heal. But that as I was able to really remember that little boy part of him that we did see often, he had a playfulness, he had a tenderness that didn't
mm,
show up very often, but when it did, it was glorious, and I loved that part of him.
mm,
And as I sat with that this week, I have been able to move toward forgiveness
mm,
in some really profoundly important ways for me.
mm,
And it's just been really, uh,
mm.
it's been a really sweet week for
Yeah,
me with this. And
yeah.
it is because I can see more than just
Mhm,
one aspect of him that he tended to bring forward a lot, that I could remember
mhm.
that young part of him that also needed a lot of care.
I am taking a deep breath, and I want to say that I feel like in this moment we are in very deep waters, and that the movement that you're making towards your own desire to see if you can forgive, to see what's in there, is not something anyone else could have put on you.
No.
It comes as an invitation when someone is ready. And I don't know how ready you are. And it's okay if you decide I'm not ready right now.
Yeah.
But I just want to say, I see you in that deep, deep place. It feels very sacred to me.
Yeah.
And that you've just shared that with our listeners, because there are many listeners that feel or know they have something
Yeah.
that feels unforgivable.
Yeah. Yeah. And is unforgivable.
Mhm.
Truly. Like, and I will say forgiveness for me has been a journey. It has been layers. There have been times when I thought I had forgiven completely, and then I went around the cycle again and there was more harm. And I think I will just say forgiveness is a process.
Mhm.
And I will say that the harm that we experienced as children, particularly, but any kind of assault,
Mhm.
neglect, abandonment
Mhm.
is, I think it's okay for me to say this, but I think I want to say, like, it is unforgivable.
Mhm.
It's not really that the person becomes worthy to be forgiven.
Mhm.
It is more about my decision to release them from the debt
Mhm.
that they owe.
Mhm.
Um, at least that's a part of forgiveness. It's not the whole. Forgiveness is very complex and very unique. And so I don't want to make any kind of like pet answer thing on forgiveness here, but I just want to say that I think it's also okay to name that atrocities against children are unforgivable.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. It is something that, once again, I'm just going to go back to this isn't something that we can tell someone they need to do or have to do or
Yeah.
demand them to. I know for me, it has been more opening my heart up to God, right? Who actually does forgive the unforgivable. And and for me, it's just been I'm willing, but I don't even know how, and I don't even know if I want to.
Yeah.
And so I want to honor your heart right now that is just being willing to step into some deep places, not by demand, not by force,
Yeah.
but by genuine desire and curiosity to see what's there for you.
And I think also because of being held in a space of love and kindness and goodness, right? Like I know that. I said that to the pearls yesterday. I now know the experience of being loved deeply
Mhm.
by people who know the dregs of my stories,
Mhm.
who know the places of my deepest shame.
Mhm.
And when you are loved there,
Mhm.
it changes. It has been changing me over these 3 years. And I think for me in the last few weeks of really naming to myself, I have experienced good, pure, kind love.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
just letting that sink in. It's
Mhm.
just a profound gift.
Yeah, it is a profound gift that we are continuing to experience ourselves and offer to one another. I think I said this in our last episode. If not, I definitely have thought it often. Um, we know, like we've known, right? Like we've known in our prefrontal cortex and even experienced in our limbic brain, we have experiences that God loves us,
Yeah.
that he wants us. But the horizontal piece of our healing that he actually wants to come from one another,
Mm.
is what we've experienced in our story group.
Yeah.
And with some other people who can meet us in the darkness of the bottom of the U, where we may be thrashing and coping in ways that bring more shame and, all the things.
Yeah.
And to have someone say, I'm not leaving you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, good work today. Sher.
Well, thank you for ushering me toward saying some things out loud that felt good to say.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we will go back and we will listen to this.
Yeah.
And just, get a sense of. So we're doing this not just to process with one another, but if we don't feel like an episode would be helpful to other people. But I have a sense that there are many of our listeners that are going to relate to your story today. And I would just ask, if you can, I just want to speak to our listeners directly. If you can relate to this, or if it brings something up in you, we would love for you to reach out to us. It doesn't have to be publicly. We have an email, CandaceSher@gmail.com. You can go to our Facebook page and message us. We understand the complexity of the healing journey. And, whether you would work with us personally or not, we do have resources that we can get you hooked up with experts in this area. Yeah.
And it would just be also a blessing to hear. I think it's there's a certain vulnerability to say these things out loud and put them on a podcast. And, we don't know who listens. And it would be a blessing to hear if it has been meaningful in any of our episodes. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. I love you, friend. It's good to be with you.
You too, Kandace. Love you so much. Thank you.